All right, in this video, let's talk about several key players who are listed as questionable in the Raiders game, go over some thoughts on that game, and then look at the latest updates on what the NFL is going to be doing about the Bills and Bengals game, seeding for the AFC's postseason, and a lot of other confusing stuff that they just released tonight. But first, how about those? What's up, guys? My name is Cole, and I do daily news about the Kansas City Chiefs, so make sure to sub if you're new. Hit that like button if you, like me, love to hear the news that Damar Hamlin had a great 24 hours in regards to his recovery. And let's get into this video, starting with an injury report. The Chiefs have officially ruled out Sky Moore with the hand laceration that he is dealing with. Meanwhile, 4 players are listed as questionable, and those are cornerback L'Jarius Sneed, left guard Joe Thuney, kicker Harrison Butker, and wide receiver Mecole Hardman. Sneed did not participate Tuesday, was limited Wednesday and Thursday, and defensive coordinator Spagnolia says that Sneed is a very tough kid that he thinks the world of, but he's definitely fighting through some pain at practice with the hip, even though he was a limited participant and not giving things a full go. Spags did say, though, he's hoping that Sneed can tough it out and play Saturday, as he thinks the Raiders have a great offense, and they certainly do have weapons. But I do not think Sneed needs to fight through injury if he's at risk of further injuring himself. What's more beneficial, having Sneed out there against the Raiders, but not in the first playoff game, or vice versa? Now, with the update that the NFL just released tonight, maybe it is that crucial that Sneed just goes ahead and plays, but more on that here in a bit. Next up on the injury report that was listed as questionable was left guard Joe Thuney, who re-injured his ankle last week in the Broncos game. He was limited in practice all week, and I'm not sure he plays Saturday either, given the fact that he was not given a full go at any point this week at practice. If that's the case, Nick Allegretti will more than likely be the guy to step in for him, as he did earlier in the season when Thuney was out with the same ankle bothering him. Next up is Harrison Butker, and this is an interesting subject to talk about for a moment. Butker did not practice yesterday as he was dealing with what was labeled as a back spasm, not a groin spasm, a back spasm. He did practice in limited fashion today, but both Coach Reed and Dave Tobe said that Veach may possibly bring in another kicker as a, quote, in case of emergency situation if Butker was not good to go for Saturday's game. And it appears that they are at least exploring that option, because they hosted former kicker Matt Wright today on a tryout basis. Matt Wright kicked for 2 games in KC earlier this season when Butker was out with an ankle injury. And if the tryout went well, I'd imagine the Chiefs sign Matt Wright to the practice squad and then elevate him to the roster tomorrow or Saturday, one of those days, if they feel like Butker is going to need the assistance, or rather not be able to play. And with that being said, it seems the Chiefs kicker woes continue this season, but hopefully Butker's back spasm is minor and he will be good to go for the playoffs. But Matt Wright did do a decent job when he was in KC during week 4 and week 5. He was 8 for 8 on extra points and 3 for 4 on field goals. Butker's had plenty of misses, so this over 2 games by Matt Wright was pretty decent. Anyway, last up on the players listed as questionable for Saturday is wide receiver Mecole Hardman, who just came off of IR and was brought back to the 53-man roster this past Wednesday. Quick side note, to make room for Mecole Hardman, they released, or waived rather, offensive tackle Jerron Christian, and the Miami Dolphins claimed him off of waivers as they needed more tackle help after Teron Armstead got injured, and after they signed former Chief Eric Fisher in December and have already placed this man on IR for the rest of the season. Wasn't even on the team a month. Don't even know how much he played. But back to the subject at hand, Mecole Hardman. He was limited all week with the injury on the report listed as his pelvis, and Coach Reed said in his presser today about Mecole, we will just see about him. He's day-to-day at the moment. If Mecole plays, though, he will be on a snap count. Coach Reed confirmed that it would be similar to what they did with Kadarius Toney a few weeks ago when they brought him back. He only played like 6 snaps or something like that on offense, but Big Red admitted that it'll be difficult to do because Mecole is really going to want to play. And as far as the Raiders injury report goes, there's really only 2 names on there. Linebacker Darian Butler, concussion, is out, and running back Josh Jacobs, who missed 2 days of practice for personal reasons, is questionable. Jacobs missed, again, the past 2 practices for personal reasons after being limited with an oblique/hip injury. Jacobs, he has 1,608 yards on the season, holds a 160-yard lead over Nick Chubb, who has 1,448 for the league's rushing title. That's a lot of freaking yards. He also played through his injury last week, so the expectation is that he will be able to go for the finale to try and retain his rushing lead and secure the rushing title. But I would honestly prefer this man to sit out, please and thank you, although he's probably going to play. All right, here's a few quick thoughts that I have on the Chiefs and Raiders game. The Raiders offense has struggled, but they do have weapons. Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, though Waller and Renfrow have had stints of injury issues this season, and then Josh Jacobs as well, of course. And don't forget, Derek Carr, he's gone. Well, he left for the season, so he was not a distraction. Meanwhile, Jarrett Stidham is in. And last week, he threw for 365 yards against the freaking 49ers defense, one of the best in the entire league. And 365 passing yards is more than Carr had thrown in a single game all season. He also had 3 touchdowns, talking about Stidham, which Carr only did twice this season. The only thing the Chiefs have going for them here is that they now have some game film on Stidham, whereas the 49ers literally basically had none. I still worry about the Chiefs secondary at times, especially if Snead is not playing. And then the Chiefs red zone defense is dead last in the NFL. They allow a touchdown in the red zone 69% of the time. God bless. The Raiders will more than likely put up some points on the Chiefs, especially if Josh Jacobs is playing and allows for the threat of the run game to open up some play action passes on the Chiefs' young secondary. They did that to the Chiefs whenever they played on Monday Night Football. And remember, Devontae Adams had a deep touchdown pass. It was all bad and all scary. Chiefs squeaked one out by 1. Anyway, meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, I would expect the Chiefs offense to come out and put up quite a bit of points on the Raiders defense. That is 25th overall in points allowed, 29th overall in passing yards allowed, 28th in net yards allowed per attempt, and is 28th overall in red zone TDs allowed. Not good. They are also below average against the run, with the only real bright spot on the defense being Max Crosby, who is a legitimate problem. Khalil Mack is nice too with 8 sacks on the year, but Max Crosby has 11.5 sacks and is 4th in the NFL in QB pressures with 76 and 2nd in the NFL in QB hits with 34. He is definitely someone that the Chiefs will have to game plan for and hope the tackles can hold up better than they did during their first meeting on Monday Night Football. Wiley alone in that game gave up 4 pressures and 2 sacks. So as long as they can avoid that from happening, maybe get out some quick passes, move it quick, I do not see a reason why they cannot matriculate right down the field and put up many points. I'm not sure Travis Kelce will score 4 touchdowns like he did in their first matchup, but I would love to see this man get a touchdown in this game. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 12 against the Rams. Someone who has scored plenty of touchdowns recently, though, is running back Jerick McKinnon. I'm pretty sure he scored 8 touchdowns in the last 5 games, and I do not expect his touchdown streak to come to an end in this game, in my opinion. Right now, I have the Chiefs winning 30-23, and good God almighty, I hope I'm wrong and it's not that close, but the Raiders played the Chiefs well in their first meeting, only losing by 1 point. Meanwhile, the Chiefs really seem to love to play teams close and down to the wire. They've had 10 one-score games this season, and in those 10 one-score games, they have 7 wins and 3 losses. So please, for the love of God, do not let this game go down to the wire for the sake of all our heart rates. Although the Raiders will probably play us as hard as they possibly can. They don't like us. Meanwhile, though, the Chiefs do have a lot to play for in this game. A lot riding on this game, actually, and we're going to talk about it right now because big news. This evening, the NFL finally released a statement about the Bills and Bengals game, playoff seeding, and a potential neutral AFC Championship site. And here's what they had to say. The NFL announced today that the Week 17 Buffalo Bills at Cincinnati Bengals game will not be resumed and has been canceled. Okay, so basically, the game doesn't count. It never existed. Both of these teams are going to have 1 less total game played than the rest of the NFL. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell informed all clubs of his decision earlier today after speaking with the Bills, the Bengals, and the NFLPA leadership. Quote, "This has been a very difficult week," Goodell said. "We continue to focus on the recovery of Damar Hamlin and are encouraged by the improvements in his condition as well as the tremendous outpouring of support and care for Damar and his family across the country. We are also incredibly appreciative of the amazing work of the medical personnel and commend each and every one of them. And pause from their announcement for a second, because if you want more info on what they're talking about with the Damar Hamlin situation, I did do a video focused on that situation earlier today, pretty in depth, about 9 minutes long. So check that out if you haven't. It's pretty good video, a lot of positive updates on Damar and his situation. Anyway, the update continues saying, among the key factors in arriving at this decision, here they are: not playing the Buffalo-Cincinnati game to its conclusion will have no effect on which clubs qualify for the postseason. No club would qualify for the postseason, and no club will be eliminated based on the outcome of this game. It would require postponing the start of the playoffs for 1 week, thereby affecting all 14 clubs that qualify for postseason play. Making the decision prior to Week 18 is consistent with our competitive principles and enables all clubs to know the playoff possibilities prior to playing the final weekend of regular season games. Canceling the game between the Bills and Bengals creates potential competitive inequalities in certain playoff scenarios. In an effort to mitigate those inequalities, NFL clubs will consider tomorrow in a special league meeting a resolution recommended by the commissioner and approved today by the competition committee, consisting of 2 elements. All right, are you guys still with me? Blink 6 times if so, because that was kind of a lot already. And it's only getting started. Basically, man, they just decided that the best deal in the situation was to cancel the game between the Bills and Bengals. It never happened. And they're going to go by win percentage when it matters, as these 2 teams have played 1 less game total. And we'll get into that. But here's the 2 elements that they're talking about. 1, the AFC Championship game will be played at a neutral site if the participating teams played an unequal number of games and both could have been the number 1 seed and hosted the game had all AFC clubs played a full 17-game regular season. Those circumstances involve Buffalo or Cincinnati qualifying for the game as a road team and are listed below. Scenario 1, Buffalo and Kansas City both win or both tie. A Buffalo versus Kansas City championship game would be at a neutral site. Scenario 2, Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Baltimore wins or ties. A Buffalo versus Kansas City championship game would be at a neutral site. Scenario 3, Buffalo and Kansas City both lose, Cincy wins. A Buffalo or Cincinnati versus Kansas City championship game would be at a neutral site. And here's the second thing that they want to talk about. If Baltimore defeats Cincinnati in Week 18, it will have defeated Cincinnati, a divisional opponent, twice, but will not be able to host a playoff game because Cincy will have a higher winning percentage for a 16-game schedule than Baltimore will for a 17-game schedule. If Baltimore defeats Cincy, and if those 2 clubs are scheduled to play a wildcard game against one another, this is wild. The site for that game would be determined by a freaking coin toss. Heads or tails? That's going to decide who plays home. Wow. If Cincy wins the Week 18 game, or if Baltimore and Cincy are not scheduled to play one another in the wild card round, the game sites would be determined by regular scheduling procedures. Then I think Goodell finishes saying here, as we considered the football schedule, our principles have been to limit disruption across the league and minimize competitive inequalities. I recognize that there is no perfect solution. The proposal we are asking the ownership to consider, however, address the most significant potential equitable issues created by the difficult but necessary decision not to play the game under these extraordinary circumstances. All right, so there you go. See you guys next time. Just kidding. There's a lot freaking in here, and I won't pretend to understand it all, but I'm going to spend a couple minutes breaking this down a little bit. So if you pay attention to any part of it, pay attention to this part, okay? Matt Derrick's understanding is that the number 1 seed will be determined by win percentage, and that means the Chiefs would, in that case, earn number 1 seed, home field advantage in the postseason, aside from the AFC Championship game in certain scenarios, and a first-round bye with a win Saturday against the Raiders. Even though the Chiefs have a chance at the 1 seed, remember, the scenarios I listed earlier, I'll throw them up on the screen. If these scenarios play out, seed does not necessarily matter, as the AFC Championship game will be played at a neutral site. If the Chiefs win Saturday and Bills lose Sunday, that means the Chiefs would host the AFC Championship game at home, even if they played the Bills in the AFC Championship. And if the Bills do not make it that far and the Chiefs do, the Chiefs will host at home regardless of who else they would play. Now, here's an even further breakdown that hopefully will provide, a little bit more clarity for the AFC Championship game scenario. It kind of just looks like this. 14-3 Chiefs versus 13-3 Bills, neutral site. 13-4 Chiefs versus 12-4 Bills, neutral site. 13-4 Chiefs versus 12-4 Bengals, neutral site. Week 18 has no bearing on a possible Bills-Bengals championship game. That would be in Buffalo. And you may be asking, well, what does the KC game this weekend mean now with all this being said? Well, according to Field Yates, it, quote, still has major meaning. If KC wins, it'll have a first-round bye. They just would not be guaranteed to play the championship game at KC, could play a neutral site. If KC loses against the Raiders and Buffalo wins on Sunday against the Patriots, the Bills would take over the 1 seed, a first-round bye, and home field advantage. Okay, so basically, the Chiefs got to freaking win Saturday, and the odds where they can host the AFC Championship at home will be the highest. And again, they will secure the 1 seed, home field advantage in the divisional round, and a first-round bye. This game just became extremely freaking serious, and I think the Raiders will not let up because of that. Therefore, do not take this game for granted or lightly. And then here's a couple more things. Rich Eisen posted this in case you're wondering. Here's the immediate playoff seeding impact of the NFL's decision to, rightfully in my mind, cancel and not resume the Bills-Bengals game. The Bengals have clinched the AFC North. Ravens cannot win the division. The Bengals can no longer get the 1 seed and first-round bye. Only the Chiefs or the Bills. The Chiefs clinched the 1 seed with a win at, almost said Leavenworth, Kansas, at Las Vegas, or a Buffalo loss against the Patriots. The Bills, however, clinched the 1 seed with a win versus New England, plus a KC loss against the Raiders. The Bengals earned the 2 seed with a win versus Baltimore and Buffalo loss versus New England. Otherwise, they will be the 3 seed. And basically now there is no scenario where KC ends up worse than the 2 seed. Lastly, the neutral site that they keep talking about for the AFC Championship game, should that matter, is to be determined. They have no idea where they're going to play it just yet. And just so you guys know, if the Chiefs win Saturday, no matter what, their first seed, that's if the Bills win against the Patriots, doesn't matter as long as the Chiefs win. Now, if the Bills lose against the Patriots, they don't have to play at a neutral site in the AFC Championship game if it's Chiefs versus Bills. So a lot to kind of take in, a lot of factors at play here. But if you come out of this video with anything, just know this. Chiefs got to win. They get the first seed. They get the first round bye. They get home field advantage in the divisional round and, quite possibly home field advantage in the AFC Championship, unless it's against the Bills. And then there is a scenario in there where if it's against the Bengals, that would possibly be at a neutral site as well. And for some additional clarity here, everything I'm talking about, it has to be voted on tomorrow. And 24 votes will be needed to change the NFL's existing rules for canceling games. 9 teams can block the proposal for AFC Championship neutral site and Ravens-Bengals home field coin flip. And if that gets voted down, the status quo stays the same, which is seeding based on win percentage, then tiebreakers. And if that's the case, if the Chiefs won on Saturday, they would just have the first seed with no caveats. They would get the 1 seed, the first round bye, home field advantage all the way through, including the AFC Championship, because if you were going to base it on win percentage, the Chiefs have played 1 more additional game. And with that win against the Raiders, I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe the Chiefs would then have the 1 seed all the way through, which is kind of crazy. I don't think it's going to get voted down, but if it did, it would actually benefit the Chiefs even more. It is what it is. And remember, it's all because of the horrible situation that happened with Damar Hamlin, collapsing on the field. No team is coming out of this with a perfect scenario. It's not perfect. It's messy, but it is what it is. That's what we got. And with all that being said, what do you guys think about all this? Do you see where the league is coming from and agree, or do you have a potentially better or different idea in mind? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?